what we're talking about today, but it's always a good opener to the live show, Nick.
I can tell you it does not.
Well, welcome down. We had a fun time yesterday, Nick, with our little putting episode. That was
absolutely
the live show, Nick. You took a 1-0 victory in the series. Welcome down.
Are you trying to replay it?
We had a fun time yesterday, Nick, with our little putting episode.
I am. Absolutely. Do you want to replay the putting challenge we had? Is that what you're doing?
Yes. Well, swing thoughts. We're going to talk that today. That is our topic. We've got on a performance consultant, Dr. Greg Cartin. He has been on Golf Science Lab a bunch, new to the GOLFTEC audience potentially, but I'm excited to hang out with him here and chat about this. We've got an interesting little video. So a few different things we're going to look into. Greg, welcome down to our daily session of hanging out and talking golf.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. Thanks, Nick. It's awesome to be on with you guys. I appreciate you having me on.
If people don't know you, what's a quick 60-second kind of bio of what you do, who you work with, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm a sport and performance psychologist based in Boston, Massachusetts, and the bulk of my clients are golfers, many of whom play on the PGA Tour and Korn Ferry Tour and other minor professional tours across the world, actually, and travel quite a bit with them, and but work with golfers from all levels. And what I've found to be most interesting is that regardless of whether you play on tour or you're a beginner, everyone really struggles with the same stuff, and I found that to be quite true over the last 10 or 12 years of doing this stuff.
Nick, what's your general perception of sports psychology, golf psychology, whatnot? What's your general take on kind of Greg's area of expertise in general?
Yeah, good question. I've met a lot of people in Greg's field, I suppose you could say, and I think I've got varying opinions of skill level and out of them. That might be like the start of all this, Greg. The only way for me to find out, probably ask you a couple questions.
That's right.
Do you view the golf swing as a motor program?
Yes, I do, for sure. I think there's two pieces to golf to playing. One being skill acquisition, and I feel like my piece is the skill access part. So those two, skill acquisition, building a golf swing, and then accessing the skill when you compete. Getting out of your own way is sort of where we step in. But the lines are crossed both ways. They sort of mesh quite a bit too.
Yeah, I ask that mainly because when I think of how to play golf, I come at it from a more mechanical perspective, I think, than most of. I think most people have the wrong idea of what they're doing. So they're working off a flawed template of how to hit a golf ball. So when they hit a shot and they don't know really what happened, trial and error only helps so much that then they start picking and prodding at the wrong parts and trying to turn the wrong knobs and how to help themselves. So usually I'm of the standpoint of you have to first understand what it is you're trying to do, and then understand it well enough and have a strong enough template to hitting where you could say, if I do this, then this will happen. And if I don't do that, then this happens. Right. And if everybody worked off of that template, I think the whole anxiety of every single shot would be much less significant than where it is right now.
Yeah, that I couldn't agree more. I may not have a job if that were the case. I feel
that's what we're trying to do at GOLFTEC.
Right.
Give everybody a good motor program.
When someone hits a bad shot, the immediate response is to fix it, regardless of whether it was correct or not. It still could be correct and not hit a good shot. So anyways, that's a big tenet that I try to work around, this idea of getting away from fixing, because that always causes more problems.
Yeah, and then I've seen so many. I've seen some of the most notable sports psychologists in the field work with players.
Yeah.
In particular, Brad Faxon has a coach that he loves to talk to. It's been a friend of his for a long time about the mental side of golf.
Yeah.
And when I ask him a simple question, and I'll pose the same one to you, I get answers that don't make sense to me in general. Which is like, so let's say your average golfer comes to you and they complain to you that they say, I slice my driver every time I hit it, Greg. Mm-hmm. What do you do with those people in the psychology aspect of how to help them?
Yeah. I mean, it's really easy, I think, for humans in general to focus on negative aspects of what we do. So once you start to identify with those negative aspects, like I'm a slicer, or I can't finish rounds. Or now what we do as athletes is now, instead of playing, we try to avoid that future that we're just assuming is going to happen. And that's where we start to bind ourselves up. So if you're afraid that you're going to slice the ball because you've looked at your last couple and you've sliced those, when you stand on the tee, now you're trying to avoid hitting a slice instead of making a good golf swing. So
Gotcha.
Trying to get away from identifying with certain aspects of our game, I think, can be really liberating.
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate your aspect from watching a few videos you've done with Cordy about how you don't want people reinforcing negative thoughts. They want them to rationalize that they happen, but then move on from that and not feel bad about it. That isn't something I hear from sports psychologists very often. I think that's where sometimes the field maybe goes astray, and know that I'm not necessarily an expert, or I don't have a PhD in sports psych like you do, or many of them, but I think we dwell too much on what not to think about instead of just deal with that. Who cares? You can think about that all you want, but here's a way to stabilize your thoughts and then get moving. The way I would stabilize someone's thinking and execution of the next shot is more mechanical, though. I'd say you aim the club face here, you swing this way, and you'll get a shot that works out fine. And if you don't, you did one of those two things wrong.
Sure. No, I would agree with all that. I think we're under this assumption that negative thoughts are bad. And when we have them, there's something wrong with me, and I'm not good enough to play this game. And the judgment starts and the tension builds. And it's not the thoughts that cause bad shots. It's our response to what we think.
Yeah.
It's really liberating to know you can think anything you want and still play well.
Oh, absolutely. And I'd love that attitude from you for sure. So is that mainly what you find to be most helpful with, say, the tour players that you work with, or the high level amateurs?
Yes and no. I think because they've been fed that for so long. And I think the example I use all the time is the young kid who's starting to play golf is told that by his parents usually that you have to go out there and you can't get mad, right? Oh, when you go out to the golf course, you have to, keep an even keel and you can't get angry. The kid goes out and plays golf, hits a bad shot, and what happens? Gets angry, and then
gets mad, right?
The anger itself, there's no issue with that. It's oh man, I'm not supposed to get angry. I must not be good enough to play this game, or something must be wrong with me.
Yeah, I hear you and see that all the time out of really good players. And then I just want to grab them and shake them and say, you don't know what you're doing. That's why you're getting so mad.
That's right. That's part of it too. Right.
If you understood how the game worked and where to aim the face and where to swing and why you might hit a fat shot and how to overcome that in the next swing, you wouldn't be mad. You'd be frustrated that you couldn't execute it. But I certainly appreciate your question. Yeah, different ways to go about that. So to answer your question, Cordy, I think the way Dr. Greg goes about this is awesome. I think it's a good learning tool for everyone to understand. Fits really well with a very mechanical template of how to play the game well.
Let's talk about swing thoughts then, or this topic, because it's definitely something that everyone deals with, whether you're shooting 100 or you're shooting 65. And so when I think about swing thoughts, you've got everything from I'm trying to get my path to go more outside to I need to rotate my hip in the backswing so I have a better turn, or I'm just focused on a target in the distance, like a limb of a tree. There are so many different swing thoughts you can have, or maybe you're thinking like, I just shanked the last one, I better not shank this next one.
That sounds like a very personal experience.
Those are very descriptive.
I don't know if you just heard what Greg said, but your thoughts don't impact the results. So I can think whatever I want, Nick. Thank you.
Eyes closed a little bit more. You looked more disheartened. It was. It's okay. Keep going. Sorry.
That swing thought, if I just hit 2 out of bounds on the first hole, I'm going to hit the third one somewhere in play. I'm going to do this. It's going to work out. I'm going to have fun today. No.
Fingers crossed.
Exactly. So yeah, and there's so many different things, right? You have some research talking about that having a swing thought of something more external is better than internal. Some research has been done on that, which is fascinating. But then you have stories from tour players who talk about having more of an internal feel and playing really well with that. So it's all over the board. And it's a really interesting topic because I do not believe that there's like one answer that can summarize it all. So anyways, that kicks us off somewhere. Greg, take us in a direction from that rambling little.
Yeah, I agree with you. Everyone's, different when it comes to swing thoughts. We've been told for a while, I think, in the golf world that if you have too many swing thoughts, that's a bad thing, and that you should only have one thought, when you set out to play around the golf, and that the less thinking, the better. And that's the state we would like to achieve, but it doesn't come from trying to think less. So not resisting what we're thinking about is actually what allows us to open up enough freedom to connect with our skill. So you can have the best intentions to set out with one swing thought, and by the time you get to the first tee, flooded with thought, and think now something's wrong. Instead, how about you show up knowing that regardless of whether you're having a bunch of swing thoughts or one or none, that doesn't matter. When we start with one swing thought, or I would view that as what we'd call an anchor, right? Where we can place our attention so we're not flooding our mind with other thoughts and thinking something's wrong. And if that's the case, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be, where my right hand needs to be in the backswing. It can be, and those are nice anchors to have, and you can place your attention there. You're going to be less distracted, and in turn, more likely to make a good swing. So that's my sort of rule of thumb in terms of if someone were to ask me what a swing thought is good for. But I also say, hey, if you have a bunch of swing thoughts and you find that to be successful, go at it.
Yeah.
But don't think that a thought is going to cause you to hit a bad shot.
Yeah. I think that's a great attitude. I like I can kind of get your general perception of just stop worrying about if you're thinking of bad things. It doesn't matter. Find something else to ground yourself and move in that direction. Yeah. I think everybody needs the exact amount of swing thoughts that they need to make them execute the shot.
Right.
It has nothing to do with one or two. That's just too simple of you have too simple of a system if you say you can only have one swing thought. That's typically what I hear amateur golfers tell their friends or people who don't really understand how the golf ball flies to address the problem that they have.
One of the most, the other interesting aspect of swing thoughts is that, if something works really well today, whether it is, the wrist at the top of your backswing and you just have a great day all day long, the likelihood of that working tomorrow or in a week from now isn't that high. It's, you're probably going to be on to something else. Like just ask any tour player what they're thinking about the week they won. And then like 2 weeks after that. And I can guarantee it's not going to be the same, probably not the same swing thought that they had. So it's kind of this fascinating also evolution of constantly changing and trying to find something that gets someone in the right feel.
Yeah. And that's okay, right? Like that inconsistency is okay. Golfers are trying always to be consistent. It comes out in practice where you're hitting a lot of balls. And then when you compete, you never hit the same shot twice and you never really feel the same all the time. So trying to recreate old feelings, like you just mentioned, takes us away from our focus away from what we're doing right now. And to me, that's the message that comes out of that. Let's not recreate what we did yesterday today, because today's different. And the more we try to recreate yesterday, the less time we're spending in this moment. And everyone talks about staying present. Well, there you go. That's to me what that is.
Yep. You need what you need right now, not what you needed 5 years ago, or even when you were playing well 10 years ago.
That's right.
Nearly irrelevant to the equation.
We had a question come in here. As a high handicapper, I have a million thoughts going through my head. When I swing, should I limit my thoughts to 2 or 3? So high handicap golfer, they probably have a longer checklist of here's how to set up, how to grip, where I should aim, like all these things that eventually become unconscious or very conscious potentially, right? So going through that whole checklist, a lot of swing thoughts. How do you help that person? Should they narrow it down to two or 3? Any advice or thoughts there?
Me?
Whoever.
I would let Nick go. Here's why. Because I think when you're talking about a high handicapper, sure, you're learning for the first time. So of course you're going to have a lot of thoughts. If there's some way to sequence them though, or to have sort of some reference points to go through so you're not inundated, that may be better off. But I think it's really important that the high handicapper has a lot of things to think about when they play. And not only is it important, but it's unavoidable. Golf's a complicated game. Yeah. And when you're just beginning, whether you're doing anything, when you're just beginning, like if you're driving a car, you're going to be thinking about a lot of different things. So not fighting those thoughts is probably what's most important from my perspective.
No, I think that's a great point, Greg. Most high handicappers are overwhelmed by believing that they're thinking about too much, and really what they are is just naive to how good players actually execute a swing.
Right.
So prioritizing those 10 pieces is important, and high handicappers or beginning golfers, like you mentioned, they can't do that yet. So I would suggest that you could probably have 10 thoughts very easily as a new beginner, just about how to set up to the ball. You don't have to, but you certainly could if you want to get into that layer of detail. If you want to get in that layer of detail, PGA Tour players could have 10,000 thoughts. They've just learned how to be so proficient at those thoughts that now they're not as significant to them performing the swing how they want at this time. New people, to Greg's point, need a little bit more conscious thought. So if it takes you 10 different small swing thoughts just to execute how to set up to the ball, and then you have a couple of them that have a pretty high level of efficacy for you to actually hit a decent shot or hit the ground in the right place or not slice a ball, then that's where you should start, and then learn how to prioritize that. And it is much easier to do that with a professional golf coach than it is with a YouTube coach or just with your own trial and error. That's why golf lessons with a competent instructor can end up saving you a ton of money as a beginning golfer, because we'll get you organized and make the game more fun very quickly.
I also, that you hit on something a little bit there. They're starting to come out with the expectation piece, right? And I think as golfers, we all fall into this trap that we always compare ourselves to when we were at our best. So if the high handicapper is out in the range and they hit 3 really crisp 7-irons in a row, that's who they're going to be when they step on the golf course. And if they don't, there's a failure, right? And then the fixing starts, and then the thoughts start coming in. So really prioritizing is really important, and to know that, to have a good sort of base understanding about how difficult the game of golf is, especially as a beginner, can really help to alleviate some of that stress.
Yeah, and we're playing ping pong here with the same message. So I'd take that maybe a step further, even to say that amateur golfers then at that point in time, they hit those 3 really good shots on the range that you said. Then they go to the course and something doesn't work. They start using trial and error because they don't understand why the game doesn't work. And pretty soon you're in just this whirlwind of, I don't know what to do. Even PGA Tour players get that way. You've seen that. I've seen it dozens of times of they start hitting a few bad shots. The panic sets in. That's where I think the game is so interesting right now. And I wouldn't mind your opinion on Brooks Koepka, and specifically in him, in a totally different direction than the amateur player. If he hits 4 or 5 bad shots or plays 5 or 6 bad rounds of golf, he just about doesn't care, because the game is not fragile to him.
Right.
You see PGA Tour players, probably the ones who come to work with you, like the ones who I've helped over my career, they're playing bad. And I don't get like Phil Mickelson coming to me saying playing bad. They get like someone who's barely in like the top 150 saying, I'm playing really bad and I need some help and I don't know what to do. Those guys are always feeling like it's super fragile, like one more bad round and they're gonna have to retire and go do something else. Or so what do you think about players like Brooks Koepka versus, say, your average PGA Tour player, and just the strength of psychology?
He's the model, I think, nowadays, and it's fun to watch him play. And I get a lot of kids that come in and say, I want to think like Brooks Koepka. Well, you don't know. Well, first of all, we don't know what he's thinking, but I can tell you one thing is that it appears that he has a very good understanding of how difficult golf is. He's one of the best players, if not the best player in the world right now. And he hits bad shots and he keeps going. And he's not fixing all the time.
Right.
The guys that fix, you don't hear from again. And I've worked with players who've have had a lot of success, and then the success isn't there all the time. And then, something must be wrong. Let's scrap what I'm doing and try something else.
Right. Yeah, it's sad, because that's where just the small refinements from someone who really knows what they're doing. That's what a golf teacher should be doing, not scrapping the whole thing and saying, well, you hit all draws, now you need to hit fades, or whatever the craziness really is.
No, it is. And craziness is a great way to describe it. And there's a lot of guys that get lost because they're trying to fix something that's not broken. It's just law of average. You're going to hit some bad shots.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're getting Bob Rotella told me once, where he didn't exactly say this, but reading through the tea leaves, you can clearly tell that what he's done, or he's been very successful. I might almost say he's made a career out of taking players who are great, not playing really well, and basically tell them just chill out and
Yeah.
go out there and play golf, so that the swing thoughts or the mechanics that they were trying to work on that might not have really had a place in their game actually just started to slowly fall out of their game
Yes.
and reverted back to a motor program that worked.
Yeah. So
You
that's
see
the
that
idea.
similar?
Sure. It's this idea of creating freedom and freedom from ourselves, right? It's this idea that the sensation is that we're not thinking. We're thinking, but they're just not registering because we're so engaged in the activity and we're having fun and we're enjoying it. Like I take players down on the range all the time and watch kids hit golf balls. Man, that's what freedom is. They're just hitting it and they're having a really good time. There's no fixing, there's no correction. They're just getting in there. And I think, and you watch press conferences of guys who've struggled maybe for a long time and all of a sudden they've won. And it's never, I scrapped everything and I found this new way to play. It's always, I sort of just simplified. I just went back to some of the things, and not that I recreated things I used to do, but I started practicing the way I used to, the way that made me good. And that felt comfortable to me. And that was, I wasn't trying to do something that I couldn't do.
Awesome. Let's we've got a little clip here, which is Brad talking about conversation he had with Rory about swing thoughts, which I thought was really interesting. I'd like to hear some of Greg's thoughts on it. I think everyone else will enjoy listening into this little insight as well. So let's roll this and then talk after.
One of the great things Rory said to me when he won earlier this year in China, before the turn of the actual year, Tiger had won in Japan the week before. So Rory's playing the final hole in China with Shoffley, par 5, dogleg to the right. There's water on the right. And Rory got up there and overcut it a little bit. He was trying to hit a low peeling shot and hit on the bank. It didn't go in the water, but he had to lay up from this par 5, and 2 makes a 5. Shoffley makes a birdie. They go back to that same hole for the playoff. And I said, Rory, you have to go hit your first shot in the playoff on a hole where you just hit it in the water. And I said, what were you thinking about? He said, well, it's a good question. He said, I hit the first one. I was trying to hit a low cut, and I feel like I leaned on it, gotten a little bit in front of it. And my dad had always told me to have a little pause at the top and let my arms come in transition. That was a thought in a field that was really easy to describe, and he pounded this drive 30, 40 yards by where Shoffley said.
So really, really cool insight. I think, we all went inside the mind of somebody in that like high pressure situation. You hit one in the water, you got to go do it again, with a ton of money on the line, et cetera, and kind of hear that, he's making active changes, and in his swing thoughts, he's thinking about actually what he's doing in his swing. And that's kind of where he's putting his attention during the swing.
Yeah.
And I think, just kind of reflecting back from Rory, I've always heard swing thoughts about him talking about his swing while he's doing that. He doesn't think necessarily, I'm not sure, I'm just assuming this, but about the target or something like that. It's always been more internal, which I thought is interesting. Obviously works really well for him because he's been able to figure that out. But is that kind of a common story, Greg, that you hear something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things going on there. One, I think that thought just came to him organically. He didn't manufacture that and wasn't like, this is what I'm going to do. This just sort of occurred to him as he stood up there. But I also think the best players, the most confident players, like Ray Allen said this, whenever he was missing a lot of 3-point shots, he couldn't wait to shoot another one because he knew that average-wise, he was probably going to make the next one. So Rory hits one right, doesn't hit a great shot, it almost goes in the water. He probably just assumes the next one's going to be perfect anyways. So both of those probably, again, all he did was create enough freedom to make a good golf swing. And he wasn't fighting that thought that came to him, and it just occurred to him. And who knows what he was really thinking, but that's what stuck out to him. And that was enough to create some freedom for him to make a good swing.
Yeah. Love your point there. It's really statistics for Rory. He's going to hit 70% of the fairway. So his odds are pretty good that next one is straight. And then he's so good at it. That's right, where I love that conversation with Brad was a couple hours long. And it's a ton of fun to look at some of that stuff. When you talk about average golfers or amateur golfers, the thought process relative to a tour player is really interesting. It's cool to hear him tell that story about Rory. I find very people actually need that sort of thought process, especially something so abstract of Rory did not hit a push cut into the water on that hole because he moved the center of his thorax a quarter of an inch more towards the target when he hit. There's a different rationale to that, but he's just so gifted and skilled, and his motor program is pretty flawless regardless of what he tries to do or think. The average player does not necessarily have those same skills. So thinking about it as I'm just going to get a little pause at the top and start down, those are the people who end up coming to us for golf lessons, quite honestly.
Right.
Greg, what do you think about this thought that some people are probably thinking of, I'm not as mentally tough as Rory, and I would be over that shot, and I would be thinking about, there's the water, it's right there, I just hit it in it, do not hit it in that water again, and have that dialogue going on in their heads instead of kind of what Rory described.
That feels personal again.
Nick, I've got a lot of personal stories.
Got a little sweaty there.
Yeah.
I steer away from that term mentally tough because I think people just assume that means you don't have negative thoughts or that you fight through them. Or my guess is Rory had all the same thoughts that you just described, but just understood that was part of what human beings do as a protection, and was able to sort of see through that and allow those to pass. That to me is what mental toughness is: your ability to think whatever you want or think whatever you think and still perform at a high level. You're not blocking anything out. You're not calling yourself weak because you have thoughts about hitting it in the water again. You're just playing. And I think that's what mental toughness is to me. So I don't think it doesn't matter who you are. You develop enough awareness of what you're thinking, you can play with freedom regardless of what you're thinking.
What a great message for people watching this, quite honestly. It's okay to think about bad things. Everyone does it. And the best way to get past it is just say, who cares? Shrug it off and go on. And you don't have to limit yourself to one swing thought.
Right.
Those are pretty powerful notes. How about help me with this one? So you've got like Rory just basically shrugged off a bad shot and kept playing well, didn't stop him, didn't even slow him down. Take someone who is very proficient at the game, plays golf at a really high level, and starts to have a real hard time. Someone like Jordan Spieth right now comes to mind as who's struggling to hit very good shots. He never really hit the best. He's never one of the best ball hitters in the game anyway.
Right.
He was highly skilled at so much of the game, was never hitting his driver into the fairway relative to his peers. What do you tell somebody like Jordan? Let's say he hypothetically comes to you and says, Dr. Greg, I am playing terrible. I feel like I've exhausted everything I can, but I don't know what to do next.
Yeah. He's a really interesting case, especially right now. And really interested to see selfishly how he turns it around. And I think he will. I don't know what he's going through in terms of swing changes or what he's working on, but my guess is they're trying to get back to what he used to do, something that feels comfortable. Right. If you try to do too much, whether it's correct or not, in a moment of panic, it's going to only cause more tension. I think it's why when players are playing well and they make changes, they're easier to adapt than when you're playing poorly and you're making changes. Correct. Because it sort of overruns the system. He needs right now simplification and freedom more than change in patterns. Those you can take on when you're playing well. Tiger's the best example of that. He's the best player in the world, made swing changes at that moment. Not when he was playing really poorly, but when he was playing well. So Jordan will be an interesting one for sure. I think he has enough belief and confidence in himself. And again, a lot of it's putting too, right? When he was playing so great, and same with Tiger, that they were putting so well. But that he knows that he can still compete at a very high level and not hit it perfect, not hit it great.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for him.
Yeah. Oh, we're always rooting for all these guys for sure. And he's become such a celebrity in golf. It'd be nice to keep him that way for sure.
But Nick, that's also he's an interesting case too, because the average golf fan says, "Oh, Jordan Spieth won a few majors. Why isn't he winning more majors now?" Well, that's just golf sometimes, right?
That's hard.
There's a lot of good players out there, right?
We're watching the norm.
We're
right. Watching the exception.
That's exactly right, and that's why Tiger's stats are so much that much more fascinating once you really understand how difficult golf is. But I think more than ever, there's a new winner each week. And these guys that make, have long runs in the top 10, that's unbelievable. To me, there's so many good players and so many things have to happen for somebody to win outside of our control. The fact that Tiger won all those events, and even the fact that Jordan won all those majors already is in itself a massive accomplishment.
Yeah, it just sets such huge expectations for him.
Yeah.
I'm hoping he can. I feel like I've seen this one before with awesome golfers like Jordan. If you can teach Jordan how to hit his driver into the fairway and have take the anxiety off that part of his game, I think everything will start smoothing itself out. He isn't that far gone. He's not that far removed from playing awesome golf, but he does need that skill set tuned into him. So there's probably other things going on as well, but that level of anxiety for PGA Tour players. Here's how you hit a driver into the middle of the fairway, or if you make a mistake, here's why the ball went to the right or to the left. Just makes the game so much more comfortable for all of them.
Absolutely.
So fingers crossed he pulls that one off.
Yeah.
Hey, I do have one question as well. If you could tell every single golfer in the world, or you could get every golfer in the world to understand the concept, would it be something that we haven't discussed already?
No, I think it's always sort of the first thing that usually comes up, this idea that it's not our thoughts that matter, really. It's how we're able to manage them. And I don't mean manage them in terms of blocking them or changing them, but more just shifting our understanding of what actually our thoughts mean and why we think in such negative terms all the time. All humans do. We have a negative bias, and we hang on to that for protection. It's how we've survived. There's a reason why there's a reason why we care what others think.
Every single day. Right.
Exactly. So there's this massive, and there's a great book out now called the Power of Bad, and it highlights all the psychology on why we think so negative, and couple that with the other one, why we care what other people think of us. And that's also a biological sort of drive to impress other people. And that's part of who we are. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the more we are accepting of who we are as people and how we think, the more freedom we create from ourselves. And I think in my work, that's all I'm trying to do, is help people be a little bit nicer to themselves so they can play with that freedom that they need, so they can access all the skill that you've helped them develop.
It's a noble task you have right there.
Well, both. Goes both ways.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Hey guys, this is super fun. Greg, thanks for taking the time on your
thank you guys
during this lockdown to come hang out with us and talk a little golf for a half hour here. It was fun.
Loved it. Love to do it again.
If people want to follow you more, what's your handle on Twitter? Where can people stay up to date? GC3 Greg on Twitter and Instagram, and those are probably the best places to find me. My information's on there. Perfect, and we'll try to link up some maybe some videos, some stuff like that as well that we've done as well with you. So appreciate it, guys. This was fun. Nick, you and I will be back here tomorrow, and I don't want to, get folks, too on the edge of their seats for tomorrow's episode, but we will be potentially doing some workout, at-home workouts live. We'll be learning and participating. I don't know what could go wrong. I don't know. We're probably going to be pros from the start. So
no, we're doing handstands, putting your shirt on, just like it's all the craze right now, Cordy. I can't wait to watch you do it. But we're having another competition. You're down 1-0.
That's true. Well, we'll continue that tomorrow. Until then, see everybody later. Thanks.